Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dim, drafty corridors of a medieval convent where echoes hum off stone walls and oil lamps smear orange light across wet cobbles. You can almost smell the beeswax and boiled linen. Your feet shuffle on cold flagstones brushing past the trailing edge of someone's habit. And somewhere behind a wall, a slow chant bleeds through the cracks in Latin. You step carefully past a broom leaning in the shadows, and your breath fogs before your face like a ghost. You are not alone here. Because despite what the old prayers said, those sacred walls didn't always guard sacred hearts. The nuns who dwelled in these cloisters weren't saints, just women, hungry, frustrated, curious, and human. You're going to hear stories that flicker between the candlelight and the parchment. Some are embarrassing, some are quietly tragic, and some, well, you probably won't survive this level of suppressed drama. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I like knowing who else is out there with me in the dark. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along a narrow corridor, passing a carved wooden door left ajar. Inside you see the flicker of a candle. A lone figure kneels by the altar, wrapped in coarse black wool, her lips moving silently. You don't hear a word. Her breath is slow, but her shoulders twitch slightly, like she's holding back something louder. There's something off about the silence. Candlelight pools around her, and you notice wax has dripped thickly onto the stone floor more than one night's worth. She's been here a while. Behind you, the wind presses through a high, stained glass slit. It howls like a scolding voice. The hall is empty. You move on. This convent was built in the 12th century. Records say it was founded under the rule of Saint Benedict, who insisted on vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But those were just words. Real life, as you're about to find, rarely fits inside vows. Not when the days are long and cold, and the night stretches for 13 hours, with nothing but prayer silence and candle smoke. You pass the kitchen. There's a bell hanging above the hearth, blackened from fire. A wooden spoon rests on a counter beside a bowl of wilted parsnips. Someone's been here recently. You glance at the bench and notice a second spoon not as clean. The medieval nunnery wasn't always solemn. It could be noisy choir practices, clanging pots, babies crying. Yes, babies. Despite the strict rules, there are court records from York, Ghent, and Milan, where pregnant nuns were documented. Some tried to pass the infants off as orphans. One notable record from a 14th century French convent mentions a mysterious cradle rotation schedule hidden in their kitchen accounts. You push open a wooden door and step into the scriptorium. The air smells of ink and animal hide. A sister with ink-stained fingers blinks at you from behind a pile of parchment. She looks tired. Not pious, just tired. And she's hiding something under the script block. You won't see it unless you step closer. It's a letter. Not in Latin. It's in French, and it's addressed to someone named Etienne. She flattens the page as if it were a psalm. Her lips are dry. She folds it twice and slips it behind a psalter. You look away. Some letters were discovered centuries later hidden in hymnals or sewn inside double-layered tunics. They spoke of longing, despair, arguments, even breakups. One from an English nun in 1293 reads, "I dreamt your hand was still warm, and you called me your lamb." You head toward the chapel. Cold stone echoes underfoot. A low hum of chant wraps around the rafters, but it's not quite solemn. It's thin, dry, like an old song sung too many times. The convent's choir leader walks with a limp and keeps a long wooden rod near the choir stalls. It's meant to keep time. Sometimes it kept discipline. The pulpit holds a missal. You step up and read, "He who looks with lust has already sinned." Someone has scribbled something under it, faintly, scratched in with a needle point. You squint. It says, "Then close your eyes." You back away quietly. Many sisters entered the convent as young as 7. Noble families often sent their second or third daughters there, not out of piety, but practicality. Dowries for marriage were expensive. A convent dowry was cheaper. Once inside, girls were renamed cloistered and forgotten by the world. But they didn't forget. And sometimes they didn't comply. You reach a small antechamber lined with wooden cubbies. Each one has a nameplate. You scan the names. Sister Joan, Sister Agatha, Sister Miriam. One cubby holds a scrap of red fabric. Unusual. You glance again. Red was forbidden here. It stirs the wrong kind of passions. Historians still argue whether red fabric was ever used by nuns for embroidery or hidden messages. Some claim it denoted medical rank. Others insist it was a mark of rebellion. This piece is soft, satin. From a sleeve you slip it back. The hour bell rings once. It's late. You ascend a short staircase. Each step creaks like it hasn't been used in weeks. At the top, a wooden railing is worn smooth by hundreds of palms. A door is cracked. Inside is a cell, bare, neat, unheated. A crucifix hangs beside the cot. The straw mattress is indented. Someone's been crying into that pillow. You can tell by the stain patterns. A single candle burns low on the floor. The nun who sleeps here has carved something into the bed frame, just initials, over and over, repeated along the grain of the wood, M plus F. You already know F isn't for faith. In the far corner of the room there's a bundle wrapped in cloth. You edge closer. The cloth smells like dried roses and sweat. It's wrapped around a book. You unwrap it gently. It's a copy of The Romance of the Rose, a secular text, not a psalter, not approved. The pages fall open to a passage describing a kiss stolen beneath a tree. Someone has underlined it. Outside, the wind has calmed. The moon is full through the stained glass, washing the room in colors that feel warmer than the air itself. You back down the stairs. The convent isn't quiet. It never was. Beneath the rules and rituals, a whole other rhythm pulses, one of letters passed under doors, crumbs of sweets stolen from the pantry, and glances exchanged between candle flickers. You descend to the lower level toward the cloister walk where stone arches frame a neglected garden. The path is worn in a curve, as if sisters made their circuits carefully avoiding a central patch that never grew anything. You crouch and touch the soil. Cold, dry, not holy. Maybe that's where it all started. You step softly along the cloister path, the uneven stone walkway clicking under your shoes. The garden is silent except for the gentle creak of an old iron gate somewhere beyond the hedge. The moonlight spills across raised beds, most of them bare. You pass lavender bushes grown wild, some crushed underfoot, and a small pile of pebbles tucked beneath the edge of the wall marking something. Maybe a grave. Or maybe just a memory. A low window glows faintly ahead. It leads to the confessional. You press your palm against the heavy door, its iron hinges protesting as you nudge it open. Inside, the air smells faintly of sweat, beeswax, and mildew. A partition made of worn oak slices the room in half. One side for the sister, one side for the priest or the monk or whoever could be sent. Sometimes it was a traveling friar whose confessions were as irregular as his theology. You settle into the penitent's bench. Across the screen, there's silence. The wood between you and the other side is thin, old, worn through in one spot. You peer through the hole, not meaning to, but your eyes adjust. The nun across from you isn't praying. She's clutching a rosary with chipped beads, but her eyes are glassy and her lips still. She's not reciting anything, just staring ahead. You follow her gaze to the wall where someone has scratched in a heart clumsy, uneven. Beneath it, 2 initials again. And a date. June 4th, 1348. You feel something shift in the air like dust disturbed. Records from across Europe tell of nuns making confessions not out of guilt, but to test boundaries. Some revealed their dreams in unsettling detail. One confessor from Germany wrote in his travelogue, "The sister told me she had imagined angels kissing her neck in her sleep. I feared the devil more for her than myself." A creak interrupts your thoughts. Another figure enters the confessional, silent, swift, shadowed. The first nun doesn't move. She seems to know who it is, and then quietly, so quietly it could be mistaken for breath laughter. It's over in a second. You withdraw, not wanting to know more. You close the door and leave the room behind. Further down the corridor is a tiny alcove carved into the stone. It holds a statue of the Virgin Mary. Her feet are smoothed from generations of touches. A candle sputters beside her. Beneath her pedestal are prayer notes, some intact, some shredded. You pick one up. It's smeared with wax, but legible. "Forgive me." I felt her hand through the veil. The veil. That simple linen headpiece meant to signal modesty and uniformity. In truth, it was a daily irritant. Heavy in summer, cold in winter. Many sisters complained of headaches. Some, as in one documented dispute from Rouen, refused to wear them during bed rest. One letter between abbesses in 1412 states, "If Sister Anne cannot keep her wimple tight, then neither shall she remain among us." You turn another corner deeper into the convent. Here the walls grow damp. You see the outline of moisture creeping up the stone, leaving faint green mossy lines behind. A rat scurries across your path. Not startled, just familiar. It knows these halls better than most. You find a room marked with a faded wooden sign, "Penance." You don't want to open it. but you do. Inside it's cold. A bench with rough woolen blankets. A single candle nearly spent. And on the far wall, a shelf with a scroll opened halfway. The ink is recent. You read it. It's not a scripture. It's a log. One nun's record of her penances. The handwriting is tight and furious. Each line begins the same. For the thoughts I had. She lists them, one by one, each more detailed than the last, not all sexual. Some violent, some desperate. One reads, for wishing the abbess would choke on her bread. Another, for remembering the Smith's boy's arms in August. This log is dated 2 months ago. The sister is likely still here. The Church encouraged self-flagellation as a means of purifying sinful thoughts. Yet it often created more vivid obsessive cycles. Historians still argue whether these rituals deepened piety or simply layered trauma atop loneliness. You step backward from the scroll. Your foot taps something. It's a small wooden paddle stained at the tip. You don't touch it again. Leaving the room, you step back into the fresher air of the main passage. Candles have burned low. The sconces leave long shadows. The walls whisper in their own way, centuries of breath held in between the stones. Ahead, a side chamber reveals itself, once a parlor, now disused. Inside are old garments, folded labeled, stacked in wooden bins. Wool tunics, worn-out sandals, linen underrobes. You lift a bundle and find something unexpected. A lock of hair bound with ribbon, hidden under the hem. It's brown, long, curled, carefully preserved. In medieval convents, it was customary for new initiates to cut their hair, sometimes entirely shaved, sometimes just trimmed. The hair was considered a symbol of vanity, of worldliness, but not every sister agreed. Some smuggled clippings into secret keepsakes. Others buried them beneath trees. In Italy, one convent kept a jar of novice hair under the altar for symbolic rebirth. Others used it as pillow stuffing. You hear a faint sound. Footsteps. No. Laughter. Fainter this time. Not playful. Nervous. You look up and see the wall fresco above the bins, faded angels dancing around a chalice. Their smiles seem knowing now. One has a finger to its lips. The candlelight flickers. You make your way toward the dormitory wing. The air here is warmer. The walls closer. Fewer windows. You feel the breath of the convent settle around you like a blanket, heavy, familiar, tight. A wooden door swings open without effort. Inside a small cell. A nun lies asleep, her hands crossed neatly over her chest. But on the floor, scattered fragments of parchment. You pick one up. It's a list. Butter, honey, figs, salt, ink, thread. These aren't items for spiritual life. They're luxury rations. You see a line scribbled beside the list, from the baker's wife. Wednesday. Trade within convents was supposed to be regulated, but under the table everything moved: cheese, lace, syrup, ink, pigments. Some convents grew wealthy off embroidery commissions. Others trafficked in wax. A few, like one notorious abbey in Flanders, funded their luxuries by selling love spells copied by nuns who had once read romance tales aloud to each other after Compline. You place the paper down. The sister stirs, murmuring something into her sleeve. You step outside and let the door close softly. The hallway leads you back toward the chapel, its stained glass catching the first hint of dawn. You pass another small prayer alcove. A hymn book sits open, page corners bent, a flower pressed inside, dried now, blue petals, forget-me-not. You leave it untouched. Back under the cloister arches, the garden seems to glow faintly in the morning light. You glance back at the path you walked earlier, the one curving around the bare central patch. You still don't know why nothing grows there. Maybe it's just poor soil. Or maybe too many secrets were buried there long ago. The wind stirs your sleeve as you move. The convent has shown you its quiet fractures, hair hidden in hems, initials scratched into pews, laughter muffled behind screens, wimples and whispered sins, all folded tightly beneath the habit. You hear the bell begin to ring. Morning prayers, but you're already walking the other way. You take a slower pace now, moving back through the archways and narrow corridors, just as the early bell fades to silence. The convent is stirring. Footsteps echo distantly. Doors creak open. The scent of morning bitter herbs, cold porridge, and wax smoke mixes with the dampness in the air. You duck into a side hall, narrow and dim, its plaster flaking and cobwebs dangling from the ceiling like pale flags of neglect. Ahead, another door stands ajar. You pause. There's a seated figure inside, tall, rigid, wrapped in a black cloak with a chain of small wooden beads twisted around one wrist. It's not a nun. The form is bulkier. A man. His tonsure is visible under his cowl. You found the abbot. He's holding a scroll the edge of which is frayed. The parchment looks handled too many times. His eyes scan the page. His mouth doesn't move. A desk nearby holds 3 wax seals, one cracked. These aren't prayer documents. These are accusations. As you stand still, unseen in shadow, his voice suddenly cuts through the silence. Again, Sister Madeline. He sighs and folds the scroll shut. The name sticks in your mind. You've seen it before, scribbled on a cot, signed at the edge of a cloth inventory list. She's one of the sisters, younger, fervent, maybe too fervent. You step back quietly. Accusations weren't rare in convents, not in the Middle Ages. Reports from bishops' visitations include lists of infractions from silence broken during prayer to secret correspondence with outsiders. The punishments varied: fasts, isolation, or even public shaming in the chapter house. But some infractions were far more serious: pregnancy, apostasy, and worst of all, influencing others. Historians still argue whether these accusations were based more on behavior or political maneuvering. An ambitious abbess could remove a rival with the right charges. A jealous novice could destroy a sister's standing with one whispered story. You move down the hallway, following a narrower staircase that leads underground. The air grows cooler. The light dims. You enter the archive vault. Here the walls are lined with chests and cabinets, each marked in Latin, Sacramentum Visitatio Confessio. One drawer lies open carelessly. Inside, a bundle of folded scrolls bound with silk ribbon, not the kind nuns usually kept. This ribbon is violet, expensive. It bears an emblem, a noble crest, a lion rampant over crossed keys. You unfold one parchment. It's a letter from a nobleman, addressed to the abbot. It reads, "I trust that the girl remains obedient. Her inclinations must not be allowed to shame the house of d'Artois. It's not about faith, it's about family. Noble families often sent daughters to convents to neutralize them, too rebellious, too expensive, too inconvenient for marriage. But once inside, some still stirred trouble. They wrote letters, smuggled out poems. One account from 1387 describes a noble-born sister who seduced 3 novices and attempted to escape during Easter processions, disguised as a lay servant. You glance back toward the stairs. The abbot likely knows more than he says. He always has. You leave the archive, the letter carefully folded back. As you reach the main corridor, another door swings open at the far end. This time you step aside as 2 sisters hurry past. One clutches a ledger, the other has blotches on her cheeks, not from cold, from tears. They don't see you. They vanish into the abbess's chamber. That room is barred to most. It's where complaints are heard and confessions rerouted. You've seen documents from similar chambers, recorded complaints scribbled by visiting bishops, noting oddities like increased pastry consumption, insufficient discipline in dormitories, and in one case, an excess of unseasonal fruit. Fruit didn't grow well in convent gardens during winter. So where did it come from? You follow the direction the nuns came from. It leads to the convent's west wing, often reserved for laundry cloth storage and deliveries. Here the scent of soap mingles with mildew. A row of half-empty baskets line the wall. Towels, tunics. But one basket has something else. You peer in. A pile of crumpled notes. Most torn. Some folded, some ink smudged. One reads, "He'll be at the chapel gate before Vespers." Another, Sister Anne saw. "She won't stay silent." You step away. These aren't new. The ink has bled. The paper has yellowed. But they weren't thrown out, just forgotten, hidden beneath linens. Secrets discarded like refuse. Nearby, a door leads to the reception room, a modest space where visitors might wait, rarely allowed in. You push the door gently. Inside is a table. A book lies open atop it. You read the page. Names, dates, visitors. The same man has visited 3 times in the last month. Once every Thursday. His name, Thomas Reynaud. His title, tailor. That wouldn't be suspicious, except that tailors were not usually repeat visitors, and never on holy days. You search the margins. A faint note scribbled by one of the porters. Left smiling. Sister Claire sent him off. You remember Claire? Her voice at evening choir louder than most. Confident, bright, too bright. One tale from a Spanish convent in the 15th century recounts a tailor who fathered 2 children by different nuns, each born weeks apart. The scandal was discovered when the abbess noticed the babies had the same eyes. The man vanished. The sisters were punished by being transferred to different orders and permanently silenced in isolation. You close the book. Upstairs, the bell tolls again. You ascend a narrow servant stairwell, the kind not meant for formal processions. As you reach the landing, you pass a small glass window. The sun is higher now, casting sharp light across the tiled floor. Dust dances in the air like falling ash. You move back toward the chapter house, the main meeting space. It's empty now. Long wooden benches line the walls. A lectern stands at the center. On it, a parchment pinned with a bone-handled awl. The parchment contains a weekly summary. Offenses. Infractions. One line reads, "Unauthorized visit to the herb cellar. Sister Madeleine." Again that name. And another abbot refused to confirm punishment. Waiting on bishop. You feel something under the bench. You kneel and reach. A broken string of rosary beads. 7 intact, 1 splintered. They're warm. You look down the hallway beyond. At the end, the abbess's chamber. Behind that door, parchment will be signed, names erased, and memory rewritten. But you don't go there yet. Instead, you turn back toward the cloister walk past the old gnarled vines that creep up the stone columns. The morning air cuts sharp against your face, and a group of nuns begin crossing the garden path in silence. Their heads are bowed, their hands folded. But one, just one, tilts her head as she passes and meets your eyes. Her look is unreadable. Not guilt, not shame, something else. You stand motionless until the last robe disappears through the arched doorway, the black hem brushing dust into the air. Abbot's authority and accusations. Not all of them spoken. Fewer of them recorded. And fewer still remembered for what they truly were, power wrapped in parchment and prayer held between candle flickers and cold stone. You remain in the shadow, and you let the silence fill your lungs again. You return to the cloister walkway. Its arches stretch long in the morning sun, and your steps fall into a rhythm stone, shadow, stone, shadow. A bell rings once more in the distance. Not for prayer this time, for inventory. The convent keeps its ledgers in a side room off the refectory. A long table sits inside covered in scrolls, dried ink pots, and sealed parchment rolls. You open the nearest logbook, its leather cover cracked and edges flaking. The script inside is precise, hurried, and a little irritated, like it was written during a cold morning with stiff fingers and little patience. Each line lists goods: grain, oil, fish, bread, wine. But the margin is crowded with additions: apricots unaccounted, honey removed before distribution, 2 jars of almond paste spoiled and discarded. You see dates where deliveries don't match consumption. You see symbols next to some names, tiny crosses, circles, and lines that repeat like a secret code. Then you find something stranger. A folded parchment wedged between the pages of a flower inventory. You ease it out. It's not a ledger. It's a note. Leave the honey behind the cistern. The girl in blue will come before midnight. Your breath stills. You scan the room. The window slats creak. A chair shifts in the corner. But you are alone. In the 14th century, certain convents kept what historians now call sweet cupboards, secret stashes of delicacies, often hoarded by senior nuns. Some even commissioned local bakers to smuggle in pastries during feast days. In one English convent, dried cherries were found stuffed into a hollow psalter binding. Another hid cinnamon in a wooden crucifix carved out to store contraband. You open another ledger. This one tracks penances, fasts, flagellations, and loss of privileges. One entry reads, Sister Johanna, 3 days silence. Reason: pastry and deception. You close it gently. Across the room, a shelf holds sealed jars. You examine one. Thick sugar syrup, cloudy and golden. Another holds preserved plums. Another smells faintly of nutmeg. You pick up a small box. It rattles. Inside are candied almonds coated in a fine white crust, likely hoarded. These aren't just indulgences. They're currency. Power, even. Sugar was expensive, even sacred. Its use was supposed to be medicinal. But here, you're seeing more than medicine. One old recipe book from an abbey in Burgundy listed a ginger cake as stomach treatment. But the ingredients included honey wine, cinnamon flour, dried pear, and mysteriously 2 night drops of blush water. You return the almonds. A stairwell nearby leads down into the cold pantry. Stone walls here are thick, cool, and damp. Barrels line the edges and bundles of herbs hang from nails overhead. You brush past a rope of onions and nearly trip on a sack of oats hastily tucked away. You stop. There's a cloth bundle on a shelf behind the herb jars. You pull it out. Inside, dried rose petals, a sliver of beeswax, and a tiny wooden carving of a man's face. It's worn smooth, not sacred, not official, just personal. Such tokens were technically forbidden, but many sisters kept small comforts, trinkets, dried flowers, or figurines tucked under their beds. Some were sentimental, others were tokens from before cloistering. In one Italian convent, a ring was found hidden inside a soap bar. In another, a letter wrapped in embroidered cloth bore the line, "I remember you beneath the pear tree." You place the carving back. At the far end of the pantry is a chest, locked, but old. The metal hinges are rusted. You pull, and the lid lifts with a groan. Inside clothing, not habits, not nun's attire. A red wool shawl, a cream linen shift, stockings, all carefully folded. You inhale. The scent is faint lavender, perhaps, and something older. Dust. Memory. Someone once kept these ready, maybe for escape, maybe for memory, or maybe just for imagining. Historians still debate whether such stashes signaled escape attempts or just private defiance. One abbess's journal from 1421 mentions discovering a wardrobe of colors fit for court, not Christ. The sister in question denied escape and claimed she wished to feel lovely, not worldly. You shut the chest. As you return up the stairs, you notice something else. The wall near the pantry door bears faint markings. Not recent. A scratched pattern, almost decorative. You trace it with your finger. A flower. A simple 5-petal shape looped and repeated. Carved slowly. Secretly. Likely at night. Perhaps a signature. You emerge once more into the hall. You're near the refectory now. Voices murmur inside. You peer through a crack. Sisters sit along 2 long benches. Their heads bowed, their bowls plain. Gruel likely. Bread hard. A single pitcher of water stands at the end. Yet something doesn't fit. You spot Sister Clare again. Her face is flushed. She passes something from under her sleeve to the sister beside her, a small cloth packet. The other nun slips it into her pocket. You know what it is. Not prayer beads, not relics. A treat. Sugar. Fruit. A token. These small luxuries serve more than the stomach. They form alliances. They forge loyalty. They quiet rebellion. In this room, sugar is power. You step away. Further along the hall, you find the old records room. Dust floats thick in the air here, settling on ledgers with bindings flaking like bark. You select one marked 39. The ink inside is faded, the Latin cramped and smeared, but one section stands out, a series of punishments listed during Lent. Sister Beatrix unauthorized access to the East Wing kitchen. Sister Elfried consumption of honeyed oats during prescribed fast. Sister Madeline hoarding sweet root and mint leaves in bed frame. Madeline again. A name that repeats too often. You flip the page. There, in a margin, a sketch. Not elaborate. Not trained. Just a little heart drawn beside Madeline's name. It's not official. It's personal. You leave the room. Back through the halls you walk beneath archways that once housed discipline and devotion. But the sugar thefts, the secret snacks, the coded ledgers, they all whisper a different tale. Not of sin necessarily, but of resistance, of moments reclaimed from monotony, of tiny acts of rebellion, scrolls of shame, and sugar. You reach the outer cloister once more and lean against the cold stone pillar. Above you, pigeons coo on the roof. Somewhere behind you, a sister laughs. You leave the refectory behind and walk toward the southern hallway, narrower than the rest, where the stone walls are streaked green from centuries of damp. This wing leads to the herb cellar. The door is old iron-riveted, swollen from moisture. You push it slowly. It groans open. Inside, the smell changes. Gone are the aromas of candle wax and wool. Here the air is thick with sage thyme, lavender vinegar, and something else, earthy, sharp, and metallic. You descend 3 stone steps into the cool, dim space. Baskets line the walls filled with dried leaves, curled roots, and bundled stems. Jars rest on shelves, each labeled in brown ink, some in Latin, others in older French. You find valerian, fennel, wormwood, juniper, angelica. This is the infirmarian's realm, the convent's healer. You walk between rows of bundles hanging from ceiling hooks, brushing your shoulder gently against the ends of rosemary and tansy. Many of these herbs had dual roles: official use and unofficial application. Mint helped with digestion. Parsley, too much parsley, helped with something else. Abortive herbs were a known secret, not spoken aloud, but spoken nonetheless. A recipe from a 14th century English manuscript describes a monthly tea made with pennyroyal savin and myrrh, coded under the phrase, "for female renewal." Another from southern France lists wild carrot seed and rue, marked with the note taken before the moon change. You lift a jar. Dried raspberry leaves, common, used for cramps, but strong in high doses. Next to it, a cloth bag contains something powdery, mugwort possibly. A label is faded but legible, for the stilling of inner turns. You replace it and glance at a ledger pinned to the back wall. Its cover is stiff with oil residue. The first few pages list patient names and treatments. Simple, expected. But deeper in the book, the entries change tone. Sister Magda, excessive bleeding advised quiet and bitter tea. Sister Elise, purging failed. Locked 2 nights. Prayer added. Sister Madeline, silent. Withdrawn, refuses fig mash. Eyes sunken. Madeline again. Always Madeline. You open a small side cupboard. It holds a wooden mortar pestle and several tiny bottles, each sealed with wax. You lift one. The seal cracks easily. Inside a syrup, brownish and smelling faintly of myrrh and vinegar. Strong, bitter. It stings your nose. This was not meant to heal. Not exactly. It was meant to remove. In convents across Europe, the line between healing and hiding blurred often. The Church condemned abortive treatments officially, yet tolerated their presence unofficially as long as it stayed quiet. Scholars still argue whether this silence was tactical ignorance or moral hypocrisy. You close the bottle. The back of the room houses a low bench with cushions flattened, frayed, blood-stained. You pause. This was used recently. A wash basin nearby holds traces of something red, not fresh, but unmistakable, and beneath it, tucked into the shadows, a cloth bundle. You pull it gently. A shift. Linen, stiff in one patch. The faint scent of juniper clings to it, and inside the pocket, a tiny carved bead. Just one. Wood. Unmarked. You leave it there. Somewhere above, a footstep echoes on the stone ceiling. Life continues overhead. You back out of the room slowly, the herbs brushing your arms again as you go. The door swings closed with a dull thud. Back in the hallway, a young nun passes you without meeting your eyes. Her hands are red, stained. She's walking fast, like she's late. Or finished. You follow her steps until she turns into a room labeled scriptorium. You enter moments later. A dozen desks line the room. Each bears an inkwell, a sheaf of parchment, and sometimes, if the sister is lucky, a cushion to ease the wooden seat. Lamps burn low. It's early still. You watch her sit at the far end. She removes her gloves. Her fingers are rough and blotched with ink herbs, and beneath the nails a faint darkness. Her hands shake a little, but she picks up the pen and writes. She's copying scripture. Her hand is slow but steady. The page reads, He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. But then, below the line, she writes something else. Not scripture, just 2 words. It's done. She slips the parchment under a psalter and keeps writing. You say nothing. Scribes in convents copied thousands of texts, psalters, gospels, prayer books, but also recipes, family letters, and even secular tales. One manuscript from Bruges hides a love poem in the margin of a chant. Another bears an illustration of a fox stealing eggs, irreverent, silly, and utterly human. As you turn to leave, you pass another desk. This one bears no writing, only drawings, tiny repeated sketches of a hand reaching through a curtain. You don't linger. Outside the scriptorium, you head toward the cloister garden once more. A light breeze stirs the ivy. You see the sisters walk slowly around the perimeter. Their lips move in silent prayers. You spot one carrying a bundle of dried herbs toward the kitchen. You follow. The kitchen is loud with mourning. Pans clatter. Water boils. Bread cracks in the oven. But in the corner sits a small pot simmering quietly. A nun stirs it with care. You approach. She looks up, startled. Then she nods and walks away. You lift the spoon. The scent is strong sage vinegar crushed berries. Not a stew. Not medicine. You don't taste it. You just know. It's preparation. In a high cabinet, you find rows of jars with coded labels. You open one. Ground bark, faintly sweet. Another thick green paste, and a third dried blossoms of blue cohosh. Not for decoration. The use of such plants continued well into the 1600s, despite official bans. Church authorities condemned them, but rarely enforced the rules tightly inside cloisters, especially when evidence could be disguised as holy remedies. You close the jar. In a drawer beneath the counter is a list of kitchen needs. One line is crossed out violently. Honey, 1 cup. Beside it, denied. Overused. A sister has written beside it in pencil. Not overused. Just necessary. You don't know who wrote that, but you can guess. The hallway outside feels colder now. You pause. Behind these walls, devotion mixes with doubt. Chastity intertwines with choice. And the infirmary meant to heal sometimes holds the heaviest secrets. You turn toward the chapel, hearing the first notes of a hymn echo off the stone. Somewhere among the voices is Sister Madeline, still singing, still staying. You step away from the warmth of the kitchen, your fingers brushing the cool stone as you follow the quieter wing to the east. The passage narrows, and the air smells faintly of mildew and lamp oil. The stone floor slopes downward slightly. This wing holds the convent library. But before you reach it, you notice something odd. A section of wall looks newer, lighter mortar between the stones and faint scuff marks at the floor where feet have brushed it. You pause. Run your hand along the surface. The stone here hums slightly with hollowness. A panel. Your fingers find the edge of a seam and press. There's resistance. Then a soft click. The wall shifts inward slightly. You push. The panel opens just wide enough for a person to slip through. Inside darkness. You step forward one cautious foot at a time. The panel closes silently behind you, sealing the air in close. You reach for the small oil lamp hanging near the inside latch and strike it. A soft glow spills over wooden beams and plaster. You're in a narrow passageway, cramped, uneven, probably running between the convent's internal walls. The dust is thick. Cobwebs cling to the corners. You follow the passage by lamplight. A few steps and a second door appears on your right. You push it gently. The hinges groan. Inside you find a small room bare but not unused. 2 beds, not one, simple straw mattresses, each with a pillow. One bears the faint imprint of a head, still recent. A table between them holds a single cup, 2 spoons, and a folded cloth napkin. On the wall, a candle sconce, burned low. You step closer and see something etched into the wood under the sconce. 2 names, not initials, names. Clara and Elise. No titles, no sister, no surname. Just names. You exhale slowly. Convent rules required all rooms to house a single sister. Exceptions were rare and always documented, but secret arrangements weren't unheard of. In a convent in Normandy, 2 nuns were discovered living in a concealed cell they had renovated with scraps over years. They called it their Eden. You examine the folded napkin, a stitched heart at the corner. Small, red thread. Historians still argue whether these hidden rooms were always for romantic liaisons. Some believe they served as quiet sanctuaries, emotional escape from rigid hierarchy. Others insist the rooms were physical refuges from punishment or isolation. You look toward the far corner. There, a box. Inside letters. Dozens bundled neatly with ribbon. Not recent edges curled, ink faded. You take one and read. The silence of the choir cannot match the silence of your absence. Another. If the gates open, I will not walk alone. I will wait. You place them back. As you return to the hidden hallway, the panel door clicks behind you. You continue toward the faint light ahead. Another sconce. Another panel. You press. The second panel opens into the convent library. The smell hits you first, leather ink dust and beeswax. The library is warmer. Lamps flicker against the stone arches, illuminating shelves built low against the walls and higher up near the ceiling. Wooden ladders lean haphazardly, and scrolls lie unrolled on reading desks. You walk slowly. Books are precious here. Most handwritten. Some copied by the very sisters you've passed. Psalters, commentaries, histories. But tucked between the heavy volumes are slimmer works, personal, unmarked, and sometimes out of place. You find one. A worn volume, no title on the spine. You open it. Romance. Not scripture, not theology. Just a simple tale, a knight beneath a tree, whispering a vow to a lady cloistered by duty. His hands are warm. Her veil trembles. Their love unfulfilled. You flip through pages, dog-eared by other hands. Margins bear notes. Read again for her. Page 19. She blushed. Let this be our garden. You slide the book back. Convent libraries were supposed to hold religious texts only, but many slipped through. In one Cistercian abbey, a copy of Tristan and Isolde was found hidden beneath a binding of a hymn book. In another, a nun confessed in her deathbed journal that she recited the tale of Eric and Enid so often that it became my nightly prayer. You move deeper into the room. Behind one shelf, you find a niche in the wall, just large enough for a seated figure. A reading nook. A cushion lies on the floor. Wax drips along the wall. A rosary hangs on a peg nearby. But carved into the stone at shoulder height, faint and deep, love endures even in silence. You feel a breeze. Another panel. Behind a shelf. This one opens easily. You find yourself in a short passage that leads into a staircase. Not on the convent's original map. You descend slowly. The stairs are narrow. The light dims with each step until you reach a landing, a small chamber perhaps once a storage room. Inside, the walls are covered in writing, not painted, carved, hundreds of names, some barely visible, others etched deeply. This was a place of memory, a place sisters marked themselves, permanently. One section holds dates. You run your fingers across them. 1314, 1320, 1336, 1347. The last one is newer, 1359. Beside it, a simple message. She is not lost. She chose. The candle burns low. You feel the warmth on your hand as you press your palm against the wall. The stones are cold. You ascend once more. Back through the hidden library door, which closes silently behind you. The convent hides more than silence. It holds rooms never mapped voices, never confessed names, never erased. 2 beds in 1 cell, letters in the dark, vows spoken in whispers, and walls that remember. The passage back into the main library seems longer now. The weight of all you've just seen presses softly on your chest. You step past the high shelves, past candles nearly burned to the wick, past books you now know hold more than psalms. Outside the library, the hallway opens into a corridor with large windows. Sunlight filters through warped glass, casting wavy shadows across the stones. A draft slips under the sill, brushing against your legs. You hear distant footsteps. Slow, measured. Not hurried like a sister. Not shuffling like a novice. These are heavier. You move closer to the window and peer down into the courtyard. A man, bearded, middle-aged, wearing a thick woolen cloak and carrying a satchel slung over one shoulder. He stops at the convent gate and knocks. You recognize the routine. A porter nun emerges, opening the gate just wide enough for a muffled exchange. Papers are shown. The man hands something over a list, likely. The porter nods, waves him in. He's the tailor. Every convent had its visitors. Blacksmiths, millers. But tailors held a peculiar position. They came close, measured bodies, touched fabric near skin, held out sleeves and hems. They stood before women with downcast eyes, and sometimes those eyes looked back. You leave the corridor and walk quickly down the central stairwell, making your way to the reception parlor. By the time you arrive, the tailor is already seated on a wooden bench, brushing dust from his trousers. He doesn't look up, but the nun standing before him does. Sister Clare. Her sleeves are rolled. Her hair is tucked in neatly, her face set in perfect calm. She carries a clipboard and a ribbon. Without a word, she nods toward the adjoining room. He stands, follows. You follow too. The measuring chamber was built for practicality. One large mirror, a bench, a standing screen, hooks with garments, a bolt of cloth draped across a chair. Sister Clare motions to the bolt. "This one," she says softly. The tailor unfolds the cloth, running his fingers along the weave. He nods. "I'll need to check sleeves again," he says. "Of course," Clare replies. Her tone is formal, detached. She steps behind the screen. Moments later, she returns. Her tunic is loosened, just enough. He kneels, begins measuring. Her arms, her back, her neck. His fingers brush skin. You don't need to see more. You step back out into the hallway. In Avignon court records from 1372, note a convent scandal involving a tailor who visited weekly, not for measurements, but for what the abbess called emotional trade. 2 sisters were found writing poems for him. One gave him her veil, another her ring. In that case, the tailor was fined. The sisters sent to different orders. Historians still debate whether these encounters were seductions or escapes, whether the tailor took advantage or whether the sisters, confined and craving touch, made their own choices. Back in the hallway, you pause outside the tailor's registry. You open the visitor log again. The pattern is clear. Every Thursday, always marked as fittings. Each entry signed by the same hand, Claire's. But 1 week is missing. 3 weeks ago. You flip through the pages, find a folded note stuck between them. The needle broke. Bring another. Nothing else. You return to the upper wing. You pass Sister Claire's cell. It's quiet. Inside, the bed is neat, the linens tucked. The cross above the cot hangs perfectly level. But on the wall, something strange. A paper pinned up, a sketch, a dress, not a habit, not regulation. A dress with a fitted waist and detailed cuffs. A drawing done by hand, careful, studied, shaded at the seams. You pull the paper gently. The reverse side holds a list, measurements, cloth types, buttons, a delivery date, no name. You tuck the paper back. You check the basket at the end of her bed. Sewing tools, thread, needles, snaps, all ordinary. But under the pincushion you find a scrap of velvet, too fine for convent wear. You return the cushion. Step out. Let the door click shut behind you. Not far from here is the novice dormitory. You pass a line of doors, each holding a girl likely younger than 20. Some not yet veiled. All learning to obey. One door creaks open. Inside, 2 novices sit on the bed whispering. A scrap of red cloth lies between them. They freeze when they see you. You nod once. They say nothing. You walk on. In Florence, one convent record from 1391 recounts a novice who began repairing habits, but gradually altered them. Tightening sleeves, shortening hems, lining collars with soft wool. Her changes were small, but noticed. She was punished with bread and silence for 3 weeks. You descend again to the laundry room. The air is thick with steam. A nun stirs soap in a wide basin. Wet cloth hangs from wooden rods. Drips echo against stone. You find a pile of clothing labeled repairs. Among the habits is a bundle tied in cord. Inside a half-finished garment. It's not a habit, it's a dress. Simple, modest, but shaped, hemmed, stitched carefully, and tucked in the fold a small note. Thursday, be ready, before Compline. The tailor again. You place the dress back. You don't tighten the knot. You step out into the cloister walk. The afternoon sun has shifted. Shadows stretch long across the courtyard. A breeze lifts the edges of veils as the sisters pass in pairs. You watch Sister Claire walk by. She doesn't look at you, but you catch the corner of red thread clinging to her hem. You step slowly around the far edge of the cloister walk, your shoes brushing fallen leaves gathered near the base of the columns. The sisters move past you, their sandals tapping lightly on the stone veils, fluttering faintly in the wind. You follow the outer corridor toward the guest wing, where visitors rarely venture and where certain nuns reside, not by calling, but by command. This is where the noble-born daughters stay. You push through a thick wooden door, bearing an inscription worn smooth by time. The hallway beyond is wider, brighter. The walls are cleaner. The windows are larger. Here the cold stone floors have rugs and the beds real mattresses stuffed with feathers. You pause at the first open door, inside a cell with tapestries. One shows a hunting scene, another a field of lilies. On the writing desk sits a small gold box. You open it carefully. Inside are rings. 3. not elaborate, but each set with stones, unusual, unwelcome, not surrendered at the gate as instructed. Beneath the box, a folded letter, addressed not to a priest or a bishop, but to my dear cousin Eleanor. You read the first line. They say God sees through these walls. Then let him watch me live. Noble daughters often entered convents not by faith, but by force. When dowries became too costly, when politics required alliances, when rebellion stirred in a girl's eyes, fathers signed them away. These weren't novices in search of spiritual discipline. They were hostages in habits. In Bruges, one document from 1408 recounts a noblewoman's entrance into a convent under protest. She was accompanied by 2 guards, her mouth gagged. The abbess signed her in under the note, daughter of Lord Bernard. Unwilling, difficult. You exit the room. The next few cells tell similar stories. One has embroidered pillows. One has slippers made of velvet. One has a perfume vial tucked into the window ledge. None of these belong here. You pause at the chamber belonging to Sister Adeline. You've seen her before in the choir, her voice loud, off-key, unconcerned. In the refectory, eating slowly, deliberately, long after the others finish. Her door is slightly ajar. Inside a mirror. Rare. Expensive? She stands before it, adjusting the fall of her veil. Her expression is blank. Her hand moves slowly. You don't speak. She doesn't notice you at first. Then, without turning, she says, "Do you think he will come?" You say nothing. She smiles faintly. "I was promised," she whispers. "He said it was only temporary." She's talking to herself, or to the reflection, or to someone long gone. You step back and close the door. In a convent in Lyon, a noble-born sister carried on a relationship by letter for 4 years before being discovered. Her lover, her former betrothed, was executed. She was locked in a stone cell for the rest of her life. Her final diary entry read, "I was made a nun by parchment, not by prayer." You continue down the hallway. A door swings open at the far end. Sister Bernadette steps out. Her chin is high. Her sleeves are clean. She holds a copy of Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy, a text not approved for novices. She passes you without nodding. She's the daughter of a local magistrate. Everyone knows. No one says it. The tension between noble sisters and common-born nuns fills the convent like incense sweet on the surface, choking underneath. Power comes not just from prayer, but from name, from connections outside these walls. In the event of conflict, it's not the humble who are heard. You reach the solarium, a warm, bright room at the end of the guest wing, its windows open to a low orchard. Here, several noble-born sisters gather daily ostensibly for reading, but today they sit around a central table. Tea is being poured. Where did they get tea? You move closer. The table holds dried fruits, a small jar of honey, and what looks like candied orange peels. Luxury. They're laughing. One holds up a letter and reads aloud. My dear Lord Felix says I looked radiant even through the lattice. He kissed the air and vowed to pray nightly. Laughter. Then quiet as they spot you. One nods politely. Another hides the letter under a book. You leave them to their sunlight and sugared fruit. Outside, you walk along the orchard wall. Trees grow in rows, pears, apples, plum. The grass between is worn in patches. You spot footprints, 2 sets, side by side. Then diverging. One leads toward the garden gate, the other toward the chapel. You follow the one that leads away. It ends at a bench old moss-covered, beneath it a folded cloth. You lift it gently. Inside is a handkerchief, monogrammed, with gold thread. Not a nun's, not a priest's. The initials are F de L. You've seen that name before. On a scroll. On a warning. Felix de Lorme. Noble. Local. Regular visitor. You slip the cloth back. Noble-born sisters lived a double life. On the surface, chants, prayers, fasts. Beneath, letters passed through windows, tokens left in trees, messages scratched into soapstone walls. Historians still argue whether these women resisted or complied, whether they turned the convent into a court of hidden drama, or merely used what little power they had to feel human. You return toward the central hall. As you enter the sanctuary again, you hear the noble sisters' voices carried faintly on the wind. Laughter, names, secrets. You pass the stone basin by the door and run your fingers through the cold water. It ripples once, then settles. Behind you, the bell tolls. Evening prayer. But not all prayers are spoken aloud. You leave the sanctuary as the bell's final echo fades down the vaulted corridors. The shadows stretch longer now, softened by the lavender hue of dusk slipping through the convent's high windows. The air grows still. You know what's coming. Evening brings quiet, and quiet brings secrets into sharper focus. You walk toward the novice wing. The door stands open. A breeze stirs the edge of a tapestry hung nearby, a simple cloth showing Saint Cecilia at a harp, her face unnaturally serene. You step inside. Rows of cots fill the room close together, barely space between. The girls here are young, new to vows. Some still in training, not yet permitted full silence. They whisper after lights out. Giggle softly into sleeves. But tonight no one speaks. You move carefully, eyes sweeping the room until you notice it. One bed. Empty. The blanket folded too perfectly. The pillow undented. A pair of sandals missing. You glance toward the corner where a thick curtain separates the storage alcove. Someone's behind it. You approach. The curtain parts easily, and there she is, a novice. Her back is to you. She's kneeling beside a small chest, clutching her middle, rocking slightly. Her tunic strains at the waist, just barely. But enough. You recognize the signs. Swollen belly, sleeves too tight, face rounder than her sister's. She doesn't look up, doesn't cry, just rocks. You crouch beside her. Her eyes flick to you, wide, afraid. Her lips tremble, but she doesn't speak. Instead, she reaches slowly to the lid of the chest and opens it. Inside a folded blanket. A doll. A sliver of soap. A tiny hat. Already sewn. She was preparing. In convents across Europe, such situations were not entirely rare. A 1353 record from Ghent lists 3 separate cases in 1 year. In each, the mother claimed ignorance. I did not know what it meant, reads one report. Another, I thought it was the Holy Spirit. But the abbesses knew. And the church had policies ambiguous, quiet, and often contradictory. Historians still argue whether pregnant novices were seen as victims or sinners. Some were cloistered in deeper silence. Some transferred. Some disappeared from records entirely. You help the girl to her feet. She leans on you. Together you return her to her bed. She lies down slowly, her breath uneven. Her hand finds yours. Then she sleeps. You leave the room. Outside, the hallway is darker. Lamps flicker low in iron sconces. You walk toward the record room. You remember something you saw there earlier, a list of penances. You find the book again. Flip to the marked page. There it is. Choir girl. Breach of conduct. Restricted diet. Prayer doubled. No name, just choir girl. They're already covering it up. You scan further. One line strikes you. Note, midwife summoned under pretense of foot injury. The signs are there, carefully worded, shrouded. You hear soft steps in the hallway behind you. Turning, you see Sister Miriam, older, stern, the infirmarian. She nods once, then continues down the hall carrying a bundle of linens under one arm and a bottle of water in the other. No words, no ceremony, just quiet action. In 14th century Paris, a nun's private diary tells of an infirmarian who delivered 4 infants in secret over 2 years. I did not ask who the fathers were, she wrote. I only asked who would hold the child if she did not. The babies were placed in baskets and left at the convent gate before dawn, sometimes taken by local women, sometimes never seen again. You follow the faint footsteps of Sister Miriam down to the old infirmary. The stone floor here is worn smooth. The air is clean-scented with rosemary and vinegar. A bed stands ready, a cloth folded into a neat square, a bowl of warm water steaming softly in the corner. You step back into the shadows as she enters. She moves efficiently, draws curtains, lights a second lamp, places the folded cloth and water on a small table. Then she kneels and prays, not loudly, not theatrically, just a quiet murmur. Then she waits. She knows the girl is coming. Eventually. You return to the hallway. The novice's secret is not hers alone. Not anymore. The whispers in the hallway, the scribbled penance records, the awkward silence during evening songs. They all know, or pretend not to. Some will keep the secret, some will not. The next morning the doll may still be in that chest, or it may be gone. Outside the chapel bell rings once, not for prayer, just for time. You pass the chapel doors, pause, step inside. The choir stalls are empty, but the music lingers, not sung, just remembered. You think of the girl, her belly, her doll, the swelling she tried to hide behind psalters, and the hands that may have helped her. Because this wasn't done alone. You walk the length of the nave, stop at the lectern. A book lies open. Hymns, simple Latin verses. But someone has underlined a line. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the silence. The ink is fresh. The chapel is quiet now. No footsteps, no prayers. Just the occasional creak of wood as the building exhales in the cool evening air. You close the hymnal gently and step back out into the hallway. The stone feels cold through your soles, even with your boots. You pass along the cloister edge again, circling toward the convent's eastern office's administrative spaces mostly empty after sundown. You push open a heavy wooden door marked Officium. Inside, rows of shelves filled with scrolls and ledgers lean under the weight of years. Candle smoke clings faintly to the air. Ink stains the floor in blotches near each desk, and on the far wall hangs a list, names of nuns, dates of vows, and notes beside some of them. Most say things like obedient quiet or needs patience, but one stands out, Madeline. Beside her name, 3 words, keep eyes open. You hear the murmur of voices beyond a wall. A second room separated by a thin door with a worn tapestry. You cross the floor slowly and press your ear to the wood. 2 people speaking, a man and a woman. The bishop has arrived. His voice is low, deliberate, tinged with exhaustion. The abbess answers softly, but there's a tightness in her tone. You can't hear every word, but you catch phrases. Not prepared for this. The girl won't speak. You promised me quiet. The conversation shifts lower now. Then one phrase pierces clear. And the letter from the D'Artois estate. There it is. You pull back. You've seen the name before on the scroll on the bedding on the trinkets. The D'Artois family sent their daughter here, but she didn't vanish. She didn't fade into silent piety. She stirred the water. You move down the hallway. At the far end, a cabinet marked Epistolae Privatae, private letters. Most are sealed, many unopened, some torn. You pull one at random. The crest of a noble house. Broken wax. Inside, an urgent plea. She must remain quiet. Her presence threatens more than modesty. It threatens peace. Another. My cousin reports unrest in the convent. I recommend an audit. Still another unsigned. Your sister is not what she claims to be. Each letter pulses with implication. Politics, intrigue, blackmail. Convents served not just God, but families. Alliances were brokered through silence, reputations protected through confinement, daughters traded not just for gold, but for influence. Inside these walls, names meant everything. You move back toward the hall, down a side passage rarely used. Here behind the water cistern, a worn step leads upward to the attic. You've not been there before. The stairs groan. The dust is thick. But the door opens without resistance. The attic is long, wooden, and half-rotted. Sunlight filters through warped slats in the roof. Boxes line the walls. Crates sealed with waxed twine. Some labeled, others blank. You pry one open. Inside journals. All unsigned. All dated. You open the first. The handwriting is tight, rushed, almost angry. I saw her again with him, in the orchard. He held her hand through the lattice. She did not pull away. Another entry, I told the abbess. She promised to act, but the tailor returned the next Thursday. A different hand now. Smoother, slower. Sister Agnes weeps every night. Her sleep is broken. She murmurs his name, Benoit. I am tired of hearing it. One more, I saw the bishop take the red book. He did not bless it. He hid it, The attic holds more than old candles and surplus veils. It holds memory, fear, jealousy, and evidence. You return one journal to the crate and find something wedged between its pages. A sketch. Two women, facing each other, one kneeling, one standing. Their faces touch, hair loose. The line beneath reads, "In the hours before lauds." You place it back. Descending from the attic, the stone corridor feels colder. The candles have burned lower now. Only the thick smell of their wax remains. You walk to the main archive room. There a scroll is being copied by a young scribe. She sees you, bows slightly, then returns to her task. You watch as she copies the bishop's last order. Secure all letters from outside estates. Review all choir permissions. Rotate night watch in dormitories. Submit all new penance logs for external approval. Tight control. Something's changed. Something has slipped beyond their comfort. Historians still debate whether such directives were common or born from panic. Some argue they were standard practice in managing large houses of women. Others believe they signaled scandal too large to ignore. You leave the archive. Night has fallen fully now. You pass the cloister walk again, now empty, the courtyard dark and still. The fountain at its center trickles slowly, barely audible. As you near the novice wing again, you hear footsteps behind you. You turn. It's the abbess. Her face is lined, her eyes sharp. She does not speak. She only watches you. Then she turns and disappears into the shadows. You feel the weight of parchment and politics pressing around you. This is not just a cloister. It is a chessboard, and every move counts. You remain in the corridor a moment longer, listening to the abbess's steps fade into silence. The air around you feels heavier, as if it too holds its breath. The candles near the stairwell have melted low, their flames flickering with less confidence now. You continue along the inner corridor toward the back of the convent. A small door creaks as you pass. It's half open. Unusual. You step closer and realize what it is, an unused guest chamber. You remember the bishop arrived unannounced. He must have taken this room. You push the door open the rest of the way. Inside, everything is arranged carefully. A cot, a chair, a writing table with a basin of water and a towel folded beside it. Nothing lavish, but cleaner than most cells. On the desk, a leather satchel. Unlocked. You pause, then open it. Scrolls. Folded notes. One sealed with wax already broken. You slip it open. A report, titled plainly "Unscheduled Visit to St. Agnes Convent." You read, "Arrived unannounced. Sisterhood orderly. Abbess evasive. Several novices absent from lauds. One report of confession with improper content. One sister, Madeline, mentioned repeatedly." You turn the page. Requested to see dormitory infirmary herb cellar. Access granted partially. Requested recent ledger. Access delayed. Observed unease among senior nuns. Tension. Murmuring. Choir leader non-compliant. You glance to the margin. A note scribbled in haste. Saw door locked during meal hour. Claire refused to explain. Another note. Midwife record contradicts fasting log. You set the parchment down. The bishop knows, or suspects. He's here for more than routine inspection. He's tracing a thread, likely several threads, and at the center, Madeline. Always Madeline. You scan the rest of the desk. One item stands apart, a red ribbon folded neatly. No label, no note. You recognize the fabric. You've seen it before. In Sister Claire's cell, in the dressmaker's drawer. You don't touch it. Instead, you glance toward the window. It's open a crack. A chill wind slips in, brushing the edge of the curtain. The view shows the edge of the chapel, and just beyond it, the orchard wall. You leave the room. Out in the corridor, the bells begin to ring, not for prayers this time, but for the evening round. Each nun is expected to pass through the cloister walk and bow before the relic housed in the main transept. You move with the line of veiled women, their steps even measured silent. Your feet echo softly. The chapel doors open wide. Candles burn brighter here. Statues loom. Incense still hangs low in the air from earlier rites. At the front, the reliquary glows faintly in the candlelight silver and glass. Each nun passes it slowly. Bows. Pauses. Then moves on. You pause near the front pew and glance to the side altar. It's empty, except for a shadow moving behind the curtain. You wait. The curtain stirs. Out steps a man, not a priest, the tailor. He walks swiftly down the side aisle, head down, cloak tight. He shouldn't be here, not during evening ritual, not inside the chapel at all. You watch as he slips through the side exit, vanishing into the orchard path. Seconds later, Sister Claire exits the choir stall. She follows him, not hurriedly, not nervously, just follows. You don't move. This isn't the first time, and probably not the last. In a convent record from 1415 in Dijon, a lay brother noted seeing a nun and a visiting mason disappear behind the chapel one evening. When questioned, he claimed they were cloaked in dusk. I feared to interrupt them. They walked like those who had done it before. You return to the main corridor. The nuns continue their slow procession. You peel off toward the choir room. Inside, the benches are empty. The lamps burn low. But in the front pew, someone sits. You step closer. It's Sister Madeline. Her eyes are open, but she's not focused on the altar. She's staring down at her lap. You see her fingers clutching something, a folded note. She doesn't notice you at first. Then slowly she turns her head. Her face is pale, her eyes ringed with shadows. She speaks softly. He said, "I would be safe here. You don't ask who." She opens the note and hands it to you. It reads, "Meet me by the south wall after Vespers. Bring only what you must. We won't return." Below the line, a name. You don't recognize it. But she does. She leans closer. "I can't go. Not now. But I thought I could." You watch her tear the note slowly, carefully into 4 pieces. She places them beneath the psalter beside her. Then she stands and walks toward the rear exit of the chapel, her steps even. Outside, the wind has shifted. You cross the cloister one final time. The orchard beyond is dark, but in the corner near the crumbling south wall you see movement. 2 figures, not fleeing, just standing. Close. Silent. You turn away. Let them be. The bishop's visit won't last forever, but the echoes of it will. You walk slowly toward the rear of the convent, past the sacristy and the stone passage where the outer wall touches the fields. The wind has grown stronger. It pulls faint smells of tilled soil, withered vines, and animal sweat through the lower windows. A faint bleating rises from somewhere beyond the chapel wall. Goats. The convent keeps a small herd, or rather, the goat herd does. You slip through a narrow doorway in the boundary wall worn smooth by generations of passing hands. Outside, the land rolls gently down into a grove of trees. Moonlight settles on dry branches. You walk a faint path marked with scuffed earth and flattened grass. The goat pens sit just beyond the orchard. You hear them before you see them rustling hooves, a soft clatter of horns, and the occasional grunt of something heavier moving through straw. But there's another sound. Laughter. Not loud, but unmistakable. You crouch behind a low hedge. Two sisters stand in the clearing near the animal shelter. Their backs are to you. One holds a small basket. The other has removed her veil. It hangs down her back like a length of cloth that's suddenly meaningless. Facing them is a young man. Lean, shirt open at the neck. A goat herd, perhaps 17 or 18. He holds a stick not for defense, just to fidget. His head tilts when one sister speaks, and he grins. You stay still. The sister with the basket reaches into it and hands him something. Bread, dried figs. He bows slightly. She laughs again. Then steps forward. They touch. Just fingers. Just for a moment. He whispers something. She nods. In Avila, Spain, a 15th century convent report describes repeated visits from local farmhands. The abbess wrote, "We found them not at prayer but beneath the walnut tree. She said he brought cheese. I saw only disorder. You back away slowly." Further down the path you find an old bench built into the outer wall. The stone is cold. Moss grows between its cracks. Carved faintly into the wood above the bench are initials. Not just two. Dozens. PMLST. Names too faded to read. Years barely visible. You run your hand along them. This place has hosted many meetings. Not all romantic. Some desperate. Some defiant. You find a bundle hidden in the crook of the bench's underside. It contains a small knife, a comb, a coin, and a half-written note. The note reads, "Next time bring more figs," and no more questions. You return it without unfolding further. These hidden meetings were never officially recorded, but their aftermaths were. In one German abbey, over a dozen nuns were relocated after rumors surfaced that a goat herd had been sneaking through the orchard gate at night. He denied everything, claimed he was feeding animals, but he disappeared shortly after. Some said he joined a monastery, others that he was buried under the new herb garden. Historians still argue whether such relationships were criminal consensual or merely convenient. You rise and return toward the convent. At the gate, you pause. The latch bears new scratches. Fresh. Sharp. Someone's been slipping through often. Back inside the hallway is dark. You pass the vestry and move into the choir loft above the chapel. From here, the view is clear rows of pews below flickering light from the sanctuary lamp and shadows leaning against the walls. You hear a faint hum. Not prayer, a song. Old, familiar, folk not sacred. It's coming from the cloister garden. You descend quickly and follow the sound. At the fountain, you see her, Sister Heloise, older, not noble. Her back is straight. She hums while placing small stones along the fountain's rim. You wait. Then she speaks without turning. They don't think we know, but we do. You step closer. She adds another stone. One kissed a boy through the herb gate last winter. Another wrote her name with his on the back of a dish. You glance at the stones. Each marks something. They forget we were young once, too, she says. In her journal, Sister Elsbeth of Lübeck once wrote, "When the goat bell rings after dark, so too does curiosity stir. I watched one sister wait each Thursday beneath the fig tree, her hands trembling for reasons not in the Psalter." You nod once, then turn to go. Back inside, the convent settles into silence. But outside, under the pear trees and near the goat pen, quiet is a lie. The moon watches, and the stories keep going. You return to the inner cloister just as the wind picks up again. The hallways are empty now, still and colder than before. The night deepens, thickening like wool. You feel it settle on your shoulders as you approach the chapter house. A wooden door stands ajar. You step through it and enter the gathering room where confessions were once read aloud, not to God, but to one another. A stone bench lines the walls. At the center, a wooden pedestal supports a large volume. The Rule of Saint Benedict, worn open to a familiar page. Let the abbot temper all things that the strong may have something to strive after, and the weak nothing to run from. A statement meant for balance, but not always practiced as such. You turn toward the far wall. There, hanging from a rusted hook, rests the object they call the discipline rod, a long switch carved from yew, polished smooth from use, tipped with a leather strap. You don't touch it. Instead, your eyes scan the shallow cupboard nearby. It holds other tools: narrow canes, a braided cord, a small wooden paddle. In one drawer, folded cloth blindfolds. Not for ceremony, not for humility, for control. In the 14th century, Benedictine convents across Europe were known to enforce discipline through ritual correction. Not every convent participated, but many did. The records describe weekly acts of chapter penance, where sisters confessed publicly and received punishment in turn. You open the book on the pedestal. A schedule is listed inside. Sister Agnes spoke out of turn. Sister Elfrida, laughter in dormitory. Sister Madeline, late to complain. Each followed by the mark rod X3 or cord X6. Some names appear again, and again. You hear the door creak behind you. Someone enters. It's Sister Miriam. Again. She walks with purpose. Her hands are clasped, her face expressionless. She does not speak. She walks to the cupboard, removes a cloth, dips it into the pitcher of vinegar on the table, wipes the rod slowly, not from use, from routine. The tools are not hidden here. They are kept in plain view. As a reminder, you step aside. She finishes, replaces the cloth, and leaves. No word. No hesitation. In Florence, a 1422 document describes a sister forced to kneel each Friday for public penance, fasting, isolation, and 6 lashes for pride in tone. Another entry notes she flinched at the third, but held firm at the fifth. Some viewed it as purification, others as performance. You look up. A painting on the ceiling barely visible by candlelight. Christ at the pillar. Whipped, enduring, a model, a mirror. You walk slowly around the room. Another cupboard in the corner bears older items, dustier. One is a scourge many tails, each tipped with tiny knots. Some knots are stained darker. You don't ask what with. Another drawer holds old ledgers of penance declarations. One entry reads, "I felt her hand at matins. I did not pull away. I was warm for the first time in weeks." It ends with the mark scourge cord silence. That kind of warmth was not welcome here. You hear whispers sometimes in the older convent walls. Not speech, not sound. Just the weight of memory pressing in the mortar between stone. Discipline was meant to correct, but it also created bonds. In a convent in Brittany, two sisters who were repeatedly punished together refused to be separated. When one was reassigned, she refused food for 9 days. The other confessed to disobedience until she was returned. They died within days of one another. You leave the chapter house. The hallway outside stretches long and dim. You walk to the dormitory. Inside, the sisters sleep, or pretend to. One stirs. Another murmurs in her dreams. You stop by Sister Madeline's bed. She's awake, eyes open, hands still. You don't speak. She doesn't ask. But her sleeve slips slightly. And you see it. Faint red lines. Healed, but not forgotten. She rolls over. You walk on. Back down the stairs toward the vestry. There a record book waits open. Someone has signed tonight's penance round. Sister Clare. 5 notations. 3 names. 2 unnamed. And beside one of the unnamed, repeated emotional outbursts. No improvement. Counsel refused. You know who they mean. In the margin, a faint note. Pray for release. Whether release from guilt, from punishment, or from the walls themselves, you cannot say. Historians still argue about the true function of such punishment. Was it justice submission, or a means of controlling emotion mistaken for sin? You extinguish the candle on the desk. Let the darkness settle. And listen. For a chapel so full of silence, there's always something speaking. You walk slowly down the north wing corridor, now the stone underfoot colder than before, as if the evening itself has begun to settle into the cracks. The passage takes a sharp turn near the end, leading toward an older part of the convent, less traveled, less clean, less controlled. The lamp here sputters low. Just ahead, you spot something odd. A basin of holy water, alone on a pedestal against the wall. Not unusual, except for the fact that this one has no accompanying crucifix, no prayer plaque, no icon. Just the water, still and quiet. You approach. Peer into it. Clear. Cold. Undisturbed. Then, something catches your eye. There's something beneath the surface. You lean closer. A small scrap of paper. Submerged. You reach in fingertips, brushing the bottom of the shallow basin, and lift it out. The ink has bled, but the writing is still visible. Chapel tonight. Bring the key. You glance around. No movement, no sound. You tuck the paper into your pocket. Nearby, an alcove. An old crucifix hangs here, carved wood, life-sized. But as you inspect it more closely, something shifts in your understanding. The back is hollow. A faint seam runs behind the shoulders. You press gently. It opens. Inside a narrow cavity, just large enough to hide a scroll, a ring, a folded note, or a key. Nothing inside now, but it's been used. The surface bears scratches, wax marks, faint impressions of corners long gone. You've found a hiding place. In Avignon, a 1384 inspection report describes a convent where 6 messages were discovered within the body of the Christ statue, suggesting worldly communication masked by sacred form. Not blasphemy, they claimed, just necessity. You continue down the corridor. A heavy wooden door stands ahead. Unmarked. You test it. Locked. But the frame shows wear scuffing at knee height as if opened frequently. You crouch and notice a keyhole. Standard. Unremarkable. But someone has carved a tiny mark beneath it. A circle with a cross through it. You've seen that mark once before, on the parchment near the herb cellar. This is not a coincidence. You walk back through the corridor past the vestry and into the scriptorium. It's nearly empty now. Only one sister remains. She sits near the window copying a text with slow precision. You pass behind her. On a shelf nearby, tucked between 2 hymnals, you find what you're looking for. A hollowed book. Inside 3 items. A key, a red ribbon, and a sealed envelope marked only with the symbol circle and cross. You take the key. Return down the corridor. The door opens with a soft click. Inside a small room. No furniture, just a low shelf, a curtain, and along one wall, hollow stone brickwork clearly added later. It's not a cell, not a storeroom. It's a passage. You press the hollow stone. It gives way. The wall opens into a crawl space. Inside, the air changes, dry, close, but not lifeless. You crawl forward. The tunnel opens into a hidden room. You stand. It's not large, but it is lived in. A blanket, a candle stub, a worn book, and in the corner a stack of letters, all tied in bundles with faded twine. You open one at random. I watched her walk across the cloister and felt as if the sun followed her steps. Forgive me, but I do not regret it. Another. They say Sister Madeline is dangerous, perhaps, but only to those who fear seeing themselves in her reflection. You let the letters rest. This room is a sanctuary, a secret kept by those who needed space breath air without the weight of walls. In Poitiers, a hidden room was discovered behind the chapel during renovations. It held 2 cloaks, 3 prayer books, and a plate with the inscription, "To see without being seen is the truest freedom." Historians still argue whether such spaces were escape routes, romantic hideaways, or quiet places for forbidden thought. You back out slowly. Seal the stone behind you. Return the key to its hollow book. Let the night reclaim its secrets. But on your way out of the scriptorium, you glance at the copywork left by the last sister. A psalm. But beneath it, a line not from Scripture. She took nothing with her but her name. You pass into the cloister once more. The wind has changed direction. The air feels different. Not lighter, not heavier, just knowing. You pause near the holy water font again, and now you see it, carved faintly on its base. Not all water is meant to bless. You step away, let it remain undisturbed. Some silence is not holy, just necessary. You leave the quiet of the scriptorium and make your way back through the convent corridors. The air here is cooler now, touched with the scent of old wood and cold stone. A distant clock tolls, counting the night's slow passage. You pass the infirmary again, its door closed tight and shadows pooling at the threshold. But something pulls you closer. A flicker of movement near the window. You peer inside. The room is dimly lit by a single candle. A figure sits by the bedside, their robes dark and simple, but the posture tense and focused. It's the confessor, a monk assigned to hear confessions. He holds a small book, its pages worn thin from years of use. His hands tremble slightly as he opens it. You listen carefully. He whispers words, low and measured. The language is Latin, but the meaning echoes beyond. Examine your conscience, for temptation lies not only in deed, but in thought. His eyes close. His breath slows. Then he opens his eyes, suddenly sharp and clear. You sense a conflict. This man hears more than sins. He feels them, burdened by knowledge, bound by vows, and caught in shadows between sacred duty and human frailty. In medieval convents, confessors often walked a tightrope. They were the spiritual counselors, but also the enforcers of discipline. Letters from one 14th century friar describe the heavy yoke of hearing secrets no one else could bear and the loneliness that followed. Sometimes they sympathized. Other times they wielded power mercilessly. You watch the monk rise. He sets the book down carefully, then reaches into a small wooden box on the bedside table. Inside are folded notes. Confessions some, others accusations. You recognize a name on the top, Sister Madeline. You step back, not wanting to intrude. The monk clasps his hands and kneels. His voice drops to a whisper. Deliver her from darkness. He leaves the room quietly. Outside the hallway feels colder still. You walk toward the chapel. On the altar rests a worn crucifix. But nearby, tucked under a pew, you spot something. A folded letter. You pick it up. The handwriting is hurried, the ink smudged. It reads, He listens too closely. The confessor is no friend. You slide it back under the pew. In a convent in Milan, a record notes a confessor removed for abuse of power, using knowledge of sins to manipulate sisters and silence dissent. Such cases were rare but devastating. You continue to the choir room. Empty. Only the echo of past songs. You take a seat. Feel the stone cool beneath you. You close your eyes. Think of the sisters, the confessor, the secrets tangled in the night. You hear a faint sound, not a prayer, a soft whisper. You open your eyes. No one there. Only the quiet. Only the weight of unspoken words. You stand. Walk slowly back toward your chamber. The night is long. The confessor's burden heavier than most, and the convent's silence deeper still. You move away from the chapel and retrace your steps to the convent's scriptorium once more. The air inside feels heavier, filled with the faint musk of old parchment and beeswax candles. The room is empty now except for one figure hunched over a writing desk near the back window. The flicker of candlelight dances over the scribbled text before her. It is Sister Agnes. Her face is pale eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Her hands tremble as she dips the quill in ink, then pauses to blot a page. The script she copies is meticulous, but interrupted by occasional notes in the margins, personal thoughts, confessions disguised as commentary. You watch her carefully. On the desk beside her rests a small wooden box. Inside, tightly coiled ribbons, faded letters, and a tiny carved heart made from bone. She pauses her writing and looks toward the window, her breath fogging the glass. A distant bell tolls. You ask silently what weighs on her mind. She sets the quill down, reaches for a folded letter. You recognize the handwriting. Madeline's. She opens it slowly. The letter reads, "I am tired of the silences between walls, of prayers that bind me more than free. If the dawn finds me still here, it will find me broken." A thin tear slips down Sister Agnes's cheek. She folds the letter and places it gently back into the box. Her voice breaks the quiet. "I write to keep her close, to keep the outside out." You wonder what fate awaits the girl whose name appears in every whispered story and every hidden note. Scribes like Sister Agnes were the custodians of memory. They recorded not only scripture, but the lives and struggles of their sisters. Some even hid forbidden texts, poems, and letters beneath official writings. One nun in 1402 was found to have copied secular love poems into the margins of a liturgical book, an act punishable by transfer or worse. You stand quietly. Let her work. After a time, she closes the book, blows out the candle. You leave the scriptorium, the scent of ink and hope lingering. Back in the cloister, the air is thick with night. You pause under the moonlight. The convent sleeps. But its stories do not. They wait and watch. You find yourself retracing the steps back through the dormitory wing. The halls are nearly silent now, lit only by a few flickering candles tucked into wall sconces. The shadows stretch long, and the faint sound of whispered prayers drifts softly from the chapel. You pause outside a door left slightly ajar. Inside, you see Sister Elise sitting alone by the window. Her fingers twist a small wooden cross. Her eyes are fixed on the dark orchard beyond, but her mind seems far away. The weight of secrets presses on her. You step quietly inside. She looks up startled, but says nothing. You notice her hands tremble slightly, and the faintest trace of tears glisten on her cheeks. Near her on the windowsill lies a small folded letter. You pick it up carefully. It reads, "If you find this, know that I wished for freedom more than safety. The vows bind the body, but not the heart." You lower the letter gently. In one convent chronicle from southern France, a nun named Elise was recorded as having secretly exchanged letters with a local merchant, risking excommunication and harsher penalties. Her story ended abruptly in the records with a note that she had disappeared from the community. You wonder if this is the same Elise. She reaches out, placing a hand over yours. "You cannot save us all," she whispers. Her voice is barely audible. You nod. There is truth in her words. Not all stories have happy endings. Outside the window, the wind picks up rustling the branches of the orchard trees. You stand and leave the room. The convent feels colder now. You make your way toward the infirmary once more. The door is slightly open. Inside, Sister Miriam moves steadily about, preparing linen and herbs for the coming day. Her face is set, determined. No time for sorrow or doubt. You notice a small bundle of dried flowers tied with red ribbon on the bedside table, a symbol you recognize. You hesitate. She looks up. Your eyes meet. No words, only understanding. In the quiet, the convent keeps its darkest stories, the broken, the hidden, the silenced. You step back into the hallway. The night deepens, and somewhere beyond these walls, a secret waits for dawn. The night grows colder as you walk toward the outer gardens. The moon hangs low, casting pale light over the barren trees and trimmed hedges. The air smells faintly of damp earth and distant wood smoke. You hear the soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. Ahead, a group of sisters moves quietly among the rows of withered plants. Their robes brush softly against the ground. Their voices are barely whispers. You slow your pace, watching. They gather near a stone well, its sides worn smooth by centuries of water and hands. One sister produces a small jar from beneath her habit. The lid twists open with a soft click. She dips a finger into the jar and flicks the contents into the well. The others watch silently. You cannot see what it is, but you suspect. In medieval convents, the well was both practical and symbolic, a source of life and a place of cleansing. Some nuns used it to dispose of forbidden herbs, potions, or letters. Others used it for secret rituals or meetings. You listen as one sister speaks quietly. May the waters wash away the burdens. You step closer. A jar lies discarded nearby. Its label is faded but legible. Fertility tonic. You look up. The sisters have dispersed. Only the scent of herbs lingers. You follow the path back toward the cloister. At the entrance, a young novice waits. Her eyes are bright with unshed tears. She clutches a small bundle. You recognize the shape. A doll. You offer a gentle nod. She nods back, silent. In one convent record, a novice was found carrying a similar doll during an inspection. It was confiscated as a worldly distraction. The girl protested, saying it was her only comfort. You think of the many dolls hidden away in chests and cupboards, tokens of innocence and loss. You walk past the refectory. The kitchen smells faintly of burnt bread and herbs. You pause by a window. Inside, Sister Claire stirs a pot slowly. She glances up briefly. Her eyes meet yours. You see something there, a flash of weariness, a flicker of resolve. You step away. The convent is still. But beneath its surface, currents run deep. Secrets, stories, and whispered promises. You walk back through the cloister. The night is full of them. You wander back through the cloister, the stone columns casting long, slender shadows under the moon's pale light. The air is still, save for the soft rustle of leaves and distant call of an owl. The convent seems to hold its breath, waiting for dawn. Ahead you come upon a small chapel door, left slightly open. Peering inside, you see a flicker of candlelight illuminating the worn pews and altar. The scent of incense lingers faintly. You step inside quietly. Near the altar, a figure kneels. It's a young nun, her veil loosened, her hands folded tightly in prayer. Her face is streaked with tears. She whispers softly, "I have sinned beyond forgiveness." You do not interrupt. You watch as she reaches into her habit and pulls out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, a torn letter, a cracked ring, and a tiny faded portrait of a man. She fingers the items gently, her breath shaky. You know the story these items tell. Love forbidden, promises broken, vows betrayed. In the medieval world, such stories were hidden beneath layers of silence and doctrine. Yet letters and tokens survived in the shadows, telling of sisters who dared to feel beyond their cloister walls. You wait until the nun stands and leaves the chapel quietly. Outside, you see her disappear into the orchard. You follow at a distance. Near a gnarled pear tree, she meets a figure cloaked in darkness. They exchange the bundle, a whispered promise. Then separation. You watch as the nun returns alone. Her steps slower now. You turn back toward the convent. The night is nearly over. You walk through the quiet hallways one last time. Passing the infirmary, the scriptorium, the chapter house, and the dormitories. Each holds its own echoes, its own secrets. You stop by the main entrance. The heavy wooden doors stand closed, but you know, behind them stories wait, whispers of love and loss, of vows broken and kept, of courage and fear, and of a life lived in the shadows. You take a final slow walk through the convent grounds. The first faint light of dawn brushes the eastern sky, turning the stone walls a soft pink. The air is cool and still filled with the distant song of waking birds and the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. The convent, once alive with hidden stories, now rests in quiet slumber. You pause at the edge of the orchard. The trees stand bare, their branches reaching skyward like hands in silent prayer. The ground beneath is marked with footprints, faint and scattered, telling tales of secret meetings, hurried escapes, and whispered promises. You bend down and touch the cold earth. You think back on all you have seen and heard, the letters, the secret rooms, the whispered confessions, and the stolen moments behind closed doors. The convent walls hold more than stone and mortar. They hold the lives of women caught between devotion and desire, obedience and rebellion. Historians still debate the true nature of these stories. Were they acts of defiance or desperation, expressions of forbidden love, or moments of human weakness? The answers remain hidden like the letters tucked away in hollowed crosses, or the initials carved softly into wooden beams. You rise and walk toward the chapel one last time. The heavy doors open smoothly at your touch. Inside, the air is cool and fragrant with incense. The altar stands bare in the early light. You take a seat in the back pew, letting the silence wash over you. There is comfort in the stillness, in the knowledge that beneath the vows and rituals, beneath the discipline and doctrine, there were lives lived fully, even if quietly. There were hearts that beat fast in the shadow of the habit. There were hands that reached out in secret. There were stories that refused to be forgotten. You close your eyes, breathe in slowly and let the weight of history settle gently around you. The convent is at peace, for now.